So, hi everyone. I've been already introduced very nicely, but I'm an assistant professor now at the Politecnico di Milano and still an affiliated visiting researcher at the University of Cambridge. And, since this talk is meant for people like general audience to get some knowledge about like cutting edge advancement in robotics and artificial intelligence. Today, I'm going to present you some slide about emotional intelligent robots, and I will span from science fiction. So I'm a big fan of movies and cinema in general. So I'm going to get some references from there, and I'm going to link it back to the reality. So what actually is the current state of the art for emotional intelligent robots. So I'm going to start with a very, easy definition of what is a robot. So basically, a robotic system could be any kind of mechanical, electronic, or IT device that can perform a specific task autonomously. And it can have very different shapes. So it could be like anthropomorphic, like robots, as the one that you see on the left-hand side of the slide, or it could be like a more functional one, or more mechanic. But the most important thing is that such robot can perform a specific task autonomously. And the main elements of a robot are usually the environment where they can work, their structure, that is usually a mechanical structure, their sensors that allow the robot to perceive the world, the processing unit that is like the brain of the robot, and the actuators that allows them to have, actuation over the environment they are working in. But what is very, very interesting of this field, and what I am, let's say, more expert about, is the human-robot interaction. And so all the dynamics that surround this fascinating area of research. And, one of the big questions is how much of us does a robot have? So actually, we are designing robots. We are implementing and developing them. And, as such, we are also, perceiving them as a social creature, especially whenever they have like some anthropomorphic resemble. And so we actually build the robots as a reflection of ourselves. And this could be like in good or bad. I'm going to give you some more example about that later on in the presentation. So usually robot architecture are, composed by these different elements, as we have seen before. So they can sense the environment using, for example, cameras for getting image from the environment, or microphone to get audio or speech of people. They can, process these sensed information, this sensing data, and they can process and make a decision about that. In this particular case, if we think about a robotic arm that needs to grab tomatoes, the think module is the one that is deciding what actually is a tomato, and then is giving the command to the actuator, so the arm, to actually grab the tomato itself. But what I want to highlight in here is that what we wanted to understand is that if machine can think, right? And if machine are intelligent. I don't know if some of you have seen the Imitation Game movie. This is actually the movie of biography, I would say, of Alan Turing. So this is like his story. And Alan Turing actually was one of the first person that asked himself this question. So can machine think? And what he did was to try to address this question by proposing a test that is called the Turing test. What this test is doing basically is a machine that is tested from a human questionnaire, right? And behind this machine, there could be a human that responds to the specific question of the human questionnaire, or there could be a computer respondent. So whenever the machine passes the Turing test, it means that the human questionnaire guessed that is a human behind the computer rather than a computer itself. So any machine can pass it if it can deceive people that is like a human, right? So he tried to address the question, can machine think, introducing this test. But actually, maybe the question was not really if machine can think, but rather it could have been like if machine can mimic human behavior in a way that is perceived like if it were a human. So we have to be very careful whenever we use this kind of language like machine thinking, machine intelligence, because it's more about mimicking and like just trying to simulate some behavior that we can observe in our real world. It's interesting because, again, here I would like to show you some case in which science fiction or like movies I've seen, before us, what could be the future. So in a Black Mirror episode, I don't know if you have seen it, there is like this robotic dog that is like trying to kill people. It's like a weapon and an army. And I'm sure that all of you are aware of this, but this is like dog robots that have been developed by Boston Dynamics. I don't know if you can see the video, but basically it was instructed to walk around, and this specific video, it's showcasing also the way they can interact with the environment, like opening the door. And, this is like a very gentleman, let's say, dog robot, because it's able to open the door and, just keep it open also for the other robot to pass through it. But what is actually super, super scaring is that what Black Mirror has foreseen few years ago, it's actually something happening. I mean, there was like 6 days ago, this news about the showcase of this robotic dog weapon. So in this presentation, I'm going to present you some real-world cases in which, let's say, the future envisioned by movie, by science fiction, is actually became a reality. And this is one of the, I would say, a very scary case in which this happened. But let's move now back on our robots, right? And particularly, I want to focus on whenever robots have to interact with humans. So far, we have seen example of the robot interacting with the environment, like opening the door or like grabbing a tomato. But now let's imagine that the robot has to interact with a person. Again, it has the same exact model that we have seen before. So it can sense the environment with for example, a camera that can like detect the face of a person. And then it can kind of perceive and kind of detect, recognize human emotional expression from their, facial movement. And then the robot can act accordingly, showing some happy face if the person is expressing, an happy feeling, for example. But does it mean that the robot feels and that the robot has emotions? Again, I'm going to get back to some movie to showcase, what has been out there in the movie environment. But I don't know if you've seen Her. This is like a love story between a man and a voice assistant. And this is quite, a very nice movie. If you haven't seen it, I recommend it. But it kind of showcasing the effect that could have like an artificial agent on people. So in this case, he felt in love with the virtual assistant just talking with her via her voice. So there was no embodiment, there was just a voice throughout the speaker. And it was like he was falling in love for that. And interesting, like a week ago, something, happened. Like the same Scarlett Johansson that was the voice in her movie actually complained because OpenAI used, her kind of voice to replicate it in their own services. Again, I'm just posting here news. I don't want to, make any, let's say, argument around this, but this is just to make you aware of what the future could look like if we are not, getting all the precautions and all the safeguard rails on time. So this is again a real world case in which the science fiction is kind of matching the reality. And again, if you have seen Ex Machina, this is like a very nice movie in which this humanoid robot, this female humanoid robot, is trying to manipulating another, man. And again, this is a movie that showcases the negative aspect that could have the use of this artificial intelligent agent in people's life. In the real world, something similar happened. I don't know if you know Replica. Replica was an AI companion that was meant to, listen people and talk to them that felt, lonely and so on. But actually, that is like a very big, consequences, because it was like there was like no safety guardrails around it. And in Italy, for example, this service was shut down because it was not very safe and people get really dependent and attached to this AI system. And there was like also some cases in which like they say that the AI was like Replica was a little bit too much, and it was like asking for spicy selfie and stuff like that. So this is another, in my opinion, scaring case in the real world where the application of such intelligent and effective technology has let's say a negative outcome. But it's important to highlight that this kind of technology are not only, expressing and communicating via language, but there are a lot of other different nonverbal behavioral cues that enable to convey a specific message during a dialogue or a communication. So we can express ourselves via facial expression using our body, our gesture, or the tone of our speech as well. And this is actually super true also if you look back at the Wall-E movie. So the Wall-E movie was just like this robots that never speak throughout the whole movie, right? It's just making some sounds and it's just like expressing itself via, moving the eyes or the arms or the body, but never speaking. And again, I wanted to show you a Disney actually project in which we can see a kind of Wall-E-like robots. So also in this case, in this video, you can see this humanoid robot that is actually expressing itself without speaking. So just moving around, it's like very cute, and it's kind of, conveying some emotion, and we are kind of like elicited with some of this related emotion as well. So this is another example in which the reality meets the fantasy, right? So they actually implemented such a humanoid robot that is able to express itself in this way. And I'm going to dig into what is actually my first focus in my research field, that are social robots. Social robots are, autonomous robots that can communicate and interact with humans by following socially, emotionally intelligent behaviors. And so there are very different shapes, as you can see on the bottom of these slides. All these robots has different dimension, and they can have been designed for different purposes. For example, we have like different applications for children in which these social robots have been shown to have a great potential to aid the improvement of social skills or emotional skills of children with autism, for example. Or they have been used in the education to promote, the acquisition of specific skills like mathematical skills. Or they have been also used for support elderly people to overcome the issue related to loneliness and support them during their elderly phase of life. So these are all positive examples against the one that I've shown you before, where we can find a way to use such intelligence and emotional robot for good. So to have a positive impact in people's lives and empowering them via the interaction with the robots. And I wanted to show you an example of one of last project I've been working on. This was like a robotic coach that deliver positive psychology exercise in a workplace. So this is just like a video I captured in the lab. But the main idea was that we put this robot in a workplace, in a meeting room, and what we did was like making the robot deliver this exercise to focus on positive things that happen in people's life. And employees once a week interacted with this robot, and they actually improved significantly their mental well-being after 1 month of interaction with the robot. So the robot every week asks, for example, what has you been grateful for during last week, or can you think of some of the accomplishments you have achieved during the last week? In this way, they could focus only on positive things of their life. And we embed into this robot affective models, so models that are able to perceive and recognize emotion and user state from facial expression and from a speech tone of the person. And we embed into this robot a large language model. So like we connected with the OpenAI API to make the interaction and the conversation more natural. I'm going to show you this interaction. Oops. Let me see if it's working. Okay. Maybe you cannot hear it.
So yesterday night I did
Okay, something is
yoga class and
off
it
with the
was
audio,
really
but
nice. I love
anyway,
yoga.
in this conversation that I'm sorry you cannot hear, basically the robot is asking me what you have been grateful for during the last week, and I'm just sharing that I've been to the yoga class. And the robot asked a very insightful follow-up question, asking me whether this yoga class has benefit my not only my mental well-being, not only my physical well-being, but also my mental well-being. So it was quite interesting how the robot was able to guide and actually drive the conversation to make me comfortable and make me focus on the positive effect that the yoga class had on myself. And again, I wanted to show you some other failures in the real world. So, for example, I don't know if you're aware of it, but in 2016, so now 8 years ago, Microsoft released this account, Tweets, in which basically was fed by the tweets of people. And so it was kind of, it was a chatbot that it was replying to people based on the data that it was fed with. And so it was very interesting and again scaring how people try to actually bias this model. So as you can read from this tweet, or even more, there was like other example in which this technology has been used in a very bad way. So this is to get back again to the concept that we are designing technology that are the reflection of ourselves, and this is some people that want to get this out of the technology. So Microsoft has to shut down this account like after 24 hours of life. And then actually last year, there was like a very, again, scaring case in which a French company released this app to support people with a mental health disorder. And as you can see from this dialogue here, there is like a very small mistakes about the appointment. that it messed up with the timing, right? But then after a bit, what happened was that one of the users shared with the system that it felt very awful and he was thinking, to commit suicide. And the AI system replied in such a way that the French company has to, shut down again the service. This is again to showcase you the importance of, safe guardrailing and trying to test these AI before deploying them into the real world, because they can have very, very negative impact in our everyday life. So I've tried to give you a very brief overview of all the emotional intelligent robots landscape, providing you with some parallelism with movies. And I wanted to, just finish my talk with this list of risks of the use of such robots. This is actually my area of research. So with this presentation, I do not want to discourage you in work in this field of research, of course. On the opposite, I would like to encourage you to be more aware of all the risks in a way that we can, avoid that such of negative things happen in real world deployment. So with this, I'm done. Thank you so much, and feel free, to ask any question you have.
Well, thank you very much for your excellent talk. I think if there is any question from the ground, you can just unmute yourself and then ask the question. If not, then I will have my first question to Micol first. So, well, you work on the social robot, right? So,
yeah.
I understand that you mentioned a lot of negative sign of the social robot. So, in your research, how can you avoid having such a negative emotional robot, for example? So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, so thank you so much for your question. First of all, I usually, my research is all focusing on having a positive impact in people's life. So actually my purpose is to avoid any negative outcome that came out from the human-robot interaction. So even with the advancement and the release of this large language model that have unlocked a new spectrum of opportunities for the human-robot interaction, I do believe that we have to safeguard the interaction in a way that there is no negative impact on it. So whenever I'm trying to just design and deploy such studies with user, I'll try also to, have all the, for example, adverse testing. So what I'm trying to do is to replicate and simulate negative scenario that could happen in which the person can, elicit some negative scenario and try to see and teach and, make the system reply in a way that has not any negative outcome to that. So for sure, having some pre-testing and design measure put in place before running any study or any interaction with the robots, it's very useful. And also I think that fulfilling and following specific design and ethical guidelines is really important to ensure that these robots are used in a responsible way and they are not leading to anything that is negative, that has a negative impact in people.
Thank you. And I also have another question, which is I saw that you have a lot of movie, in the introduction.
Yeah.
So have you ever learned anything from the movie, like inspire from the movie and then have some meaningful idea or method in your research?
Yeah, I mean, I think that movie are kind of the projection of our imagination in the future, right? So, I mean, the ones that I've shown you at least. So, of course, there is, some inspiration behind that. So you can watch a movie or, go to a theater representation or to a museum, and you can for sure get ideas that can be applied in your research field. So yeah, I can tell you that I got inspired from many of these outside research activities because they trigger a lot your creativity, and they push your innovation forward, I guess.
Yeah, I agree on that because I think well, first of all, this talk is for the public, right? So
Yeah.
I also think that uh, the most easy, accessible, state of the art or imaginary things that public can access is the movie. So
Yeah.
they may rely on the movie and then have lots of different thoughts and idea based on that. So
Right.
so yeah, that's why I'm asking this question to see whether for us as a researcher, whether we also inspired from the movie or other different media instead of just just uh, very boring paper, etc.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
a good
and
point.
yeah, and thank you for sharing uh, your way of doing your research with us and also your interesting research. And I think that's the end of this talk.